The Audacity of She. Incisive conversations with women who are challenging the status quo to create wildly fulfilling lives. Plus, practical information you can apply to your life right now. Hi, today we are talking with author and daily life designer Katie Lee. Katie and I met in Todd Herman's 90-Day Year. I discovered that we both live in Minnesota and we have ties to the same small town, Montevideo, that it seems no one has ever heard of. So I started following along with her content. Over the past 2 years, I have loved listening to Katie's perspective and practical tips on designing your everyday life and breaking free from busy. So I asked her to come on The Audacity of She to share. In this episode, we talk about daily life design and how we can use it to live our lives more joyfully. Getting a grip on your everyday life so it doesn't suck. Going against the grain to create your own personal design. Small changes that can change your entire life. And busyness, how to accomplish unbusy when you love all the things in your life, and a lot more. So enjoy the conversation, and I will catch you on the other side. This episode is brought to you in part by Audible. For you, my friends and listeners of The Audacity of She, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial so you can check out their service for yourself. I've used Audible consistently month over month to have access to all of my favorite books. To see my recommended list and start your free trial, visit theaudacityofshe.com/books. Again, that's theaudacityofshe.com/books. Katie, hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I am doing really well.
I've been really looking forward to this conversation, so I'm happy that now is the day.
Me too.
Cool. So I think the best place for us to start is I hear that a lot of what you talk about, it has to do with designing your everyday life and with breaking free from busy. So what inspired you to pursue this path?
It has been an undercurrent in my entire life, really. So I was one of those little girls who, for fun, liked to rearrange her room and write plans for things and just try different ways of doing things. So that has always just been a part of my personality. But when I started my adult life with my husband, we lived away from our family. So we lived in a different state than we grew up. And it gave us a chance to really experiment with how to do life. We could try different things, we could live in different ways, and we wouldn't get like any flack from our family, or no one would really even know. And so we got this kind of wonderful gift of being able to try out being adults in different ways without anyone commenting on it or getting any feedback. And it allowed us to really figure out what worked for us, figured out what we liked and didn't like. And so that was really the start of this journey of lifestyle design. And it started very personally, just in my own life, in my own marriage. And it just grew and grew and grew into now teaching it. But just from a fundamental level, I believe that when people get a grip on their daily life, when they get a grip on how they're doing everyday life, everything changes for the better. And it is so personal, but it is your life. You know, like these everydays make up your entire life. And so if they suck, if they feel stressful, if they, aren't going well, that's it. That's your whole life. And so I think life change really starts with how you operate day in and day out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about daily life design. What does daily life design mean to you, and how can we use that concept to live our lives more joyfully?
So, for what I discovered when I was first experimenting with lifestyle design is that it is not, or at the time, and this was probably 8 years ago, at that time, it was not commonplace. And so many people I ran into, whether they were family or friends or just new people I was meeting, they just were operating in their daily lives however they were taught or brought up to do things. So if they just did what their parents did, they did what their teachers told them to do, or however they saw the general community doing it, and they never challenged it. And so the thought of even having a daily life design would have seemed very foreign. And so we learned very early on, and I'm really grateful for this, that we're pretty much in control of our lives and we can do whatever we want to. But a lot of that's going to go against the grain of what our parents or society or our community is doing. And so I really look at daily life design as a very personal design for how you move throughout your day. So how do you wake up? How do you do your mornings? How do you do your work day? How do you do that transition from work to home? How do you do your evenings? And every single detail in between. And all of those details add up to you feeling healthy or not, feeling happy or not, having a good mood or not, having strong relationships or not. And so I really saw that all those micro details that go into your day have huge impact on the makeup of your entire life. And so the good part about that is if we are really in control, it should feel empowering because then you can make really small, totally doable, non-threatening changes or non-intimidating changes to how you do things, and that can change your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me, I've just picked up this book, The Slight Edge, and it talks about that same concept well, I'm like halfway through the book, but so far it's a lot of it, just these incremental changes day by day and how those change like the trajectory of your entire life. So yes, I believe that to be so true too.
Yeah, it's something that once you understand the concept of it, you feel so powerful because you can make these really easy changes and then see a completely different life for yourself unfold, and it's so positive and so empowering.
Hmm. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so let's talk about busyness because it seems like there's such a push to do less. And I think that can be relevant. So, for the women who enjoy the things we have in our lives, but we still feel really busy, what does unbusy mean for us and how can we accomplish it?
That is such a good question, and that is a mindset that I'm really running into a lot lately. So I started looking into busyness because I wrote my book in 2015, and the number one question I got was, but where do you find the time? Like, where do you find the time to make any of these changes? And so I realized that busyness was a huge factor. But since, teaching about busyness for over a year now, the number one mindset or fear or just kind of skepticism about truly breaking free from busy is this notion of like, but I don't want to do less. I don't want to clear out my life. I don't want to be doing nothing. I like all of these things and I want to go for these things. And so there's this huge disconnect between doing less and that equaling being less or having less or not accomplishing what we're setting out to accomplish. And so one of the first steps in becoming unbusy is breaking free from those mindsets that you don't have to be going and doing 24/7 in order for you to have a fulfilling life, in order for you to accomplish your goals, in order for you to get, quote unquote, get it all done. And so that is one of the first major mindsets that we have to break free from, as well as that concept that if we are doing less, then we are less or we are being less, which just isn't true. Um, but for a lot of us, it is decades, if not a lifetime, like if for millennials, especially a lifetime of conditioning to be productive all the time, to be accomplishing all the time. And we didn't really challenge that until we got into this stage of our life and realized that that doesn't feel very good. It's stressful. It's often detrimental to our health. And surprisingly, that model for doing work isn't even the most productive way to accomplish your goals. To go or be on all the time isn't actually the most efficient way to achieve. And so we're seeing this shift in society right now for people seeking a different way. But up until this point, we've only been told, like, say no to more activities and cut things out of your life and do less. And that doesn't exactly resonate with people who want big lives and they want to do a lot. So I sometimes agree with doing less. I sometimes agree with saying no, but it is definitely not the end all be all to becoming unbusy. And so I would say if you want to look at it in a different way, start with this framework, because in a podcast I can't like break down how to undo busyness in
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
30 minutes. But I go much deeper into it in the stuff that I teach. But here's just a framework for how you can look at how you're doing life and where business falls into it. If you are going to give time and energy to something, which really where you spend your time and energy is literally the ingredients for making up your entire life. So it's really important. So if you're going to give time and energy to something, um, you should only give it to things that help you move forward on the life that you actually want, not the life that your parents want or that you're seeing on Instagram or that somewhere you got the message from society that you should have. You should only give it to things that so move you forward in the life you want, make you happy, or keep you healthy. And
mm,
everything else is just a part of the trap of busyness that modern society really loves to keep us in.
mm,
Because when we're really busy, we are not paying attention to what's going on around us. We can't challenge, status quo or systems that are keeping people oppressed or down. We can't get involved in things. And so if where you're spending your time and energy doesn't move you toward a life you want, doesn't make you happy, and doesn't keep you healthy, it's got to go. And I think that is where that doing less comes in, because for me and for a lot of people, when we think of doing less, we immediately go to the fear of like cutting out our favorite activities or just like sitting there absolutely doing nothing for the rest of all time, which does not, resonate at all.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I know that with my own busyness that I'll find that like if I get into that, I like how you call it a mind state because it really is. And if I allow myself to have too many things cycling in my head, I'll be so not present with my kids and I may have a whole evening go by like that. And I think, oh boy, I barely even tuned into what was actually going on. Like I didn't like immerse myself into our environment. So I do think it's just so important for us to realize where we can be more unbusy in our minds. So I love that. I really do.
Yeah. And once you recognize what isn't important to you, what isn't contributing to your health, your happiness, or the life that you want, it becomes so much easier and really motivating to just cut that out
Hmm.
because it matters so little to you. But when you're trying to just randomly look at your entire schedule and say, like, where can I get back some time? That's not as easy.
Hmm. Sure. Okay. And then I'd like to talk about you have this hashtag, this is my whole life. So talk to me about that. What does that mean? And how can we apply that to our lives?
So it comes from honestly like a direct download from the universe or from somewhere, and I got it probably 8 years ago. Just randomly watching like a commercial about texting and driving, and I had this like life moment where I realized that it can all be taken away in an instant.
Hmm.
But that's like a morbid way to look at it. But it showed me that like this right now is my life. This Wednesday, this afternoon, this time is it. And if I don't recognize that, I'm going to spend potentially my entire life waiting for bigger life events and huge trips or big moments before I start to feel happy, before I start to be present, before I start to live fully. And that made me so panicky and freaked out that I had to change. And so this is my whole life really is a reminder to myself. It's a reminder to others that this moment, this day is it. And that can translate into however you want to look at it. It doesn't have to be this big scary thing. But for me, it takes two major forms. The one side is I'm not going to wait for something bigger to be happy. So that means that if my regular everyday life isn't great, then I need to do something about it because
Mm,
my regular everyday life is my life. Like that is for most of us, that's how we're going to spend the majority of our years is our regular, you know, daily life. And so
mhm,
if that is terrible, if that is negative or stressful or overwhelming or just sucky in any way, then that's where you should start to make some changes. So that was the one side that I took away from that download. And I honestly got like this is my whole life as some sort of download and I've had it as my motto for a long time.
sure.
The other half of it is I don't want to wait for random permission or some specific age marker or some I don't know, some measure before I go after what I really want.
Mm,
So I don't need to wait until I'm a certain age before I do something that everyone deems is something you should do in your 40s or your 50s. I don't need to wait for retirement before I take those trips. I don't need to wait for some random permission before I, get healthy or before I make changes in my life. And so it has been so motivating for me to both get my daily life to a place that I really love. And I can honestly say that even though there are hard days, even though sometimes I have to do tasks I don't like, I really do love my daily life. And that's from making intentional changes. But I've also taken those big trips and done things that I think a lot of people hold off until they one day have more time and or until they've reached a certain place in their career or until they're a certain age.
mm, yeah, absolutely. So, okay, then speaking to travel, you do travel quite a bit. I've seen you this year. You were down in Cuba. That looked really cool, by the way. But yeah, you do travel regularly. So how do you apply these concepts and keep the same um, lack of over busyness, or how do you keep your unbusy mentality and this effortless everyday mentality when you're traveling and there's just a lot more going on?
So, two different ways. So I have a system for making changes, which I share in my book in depth, so you can just do it yourself. I apply that same exact system to travel. So we travel a lot, and every single time we have a reflection on how it went. We take notes, and we make changes to how we're traveling so that it's more and more effortless every single time. So over the years, our travel has turned into a very streamlined system that saves us money. It saves, exertion of energy. It helps us to transition back into our normal lives a lot easier, which makes us more likely to travel more. But also, I just cut myself some slack with a lot of the systems that I use in my normal life, and I just recognize that we're like in a different country, and we kind of have to go with the flow a little bit. And that the greatest example where that shows up is in how messy our like Airbnbs and hotel rooms become. So we have like a really clean house. It's really minimal. There's not a lot of junk and it stays really clean. But when we go to a hotel room, there is there is shit everywhere. Like it
Yeah.
looks like a tornado came through in like a matter of minutes, and it shows us how streamlined and how systematized our life is at home, because when we don't have that, we are both just a complete mess. So there's definitely some grace that I give myself when we're traveling.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I think that's important. I have two kids, so when we travel, I feel like, instantly everything is a mess. We're all just sitting in mess.
Yeah. To talk more about like that framework for busyness when we're traveling, we we've really started to not do the activities that you're supposed to do when you go to a certain place.
Hmm.
So, if you Google locations, there's always like, do these top 5 excursions or see these sites when you visit this country. But over time, we've just tuned into what we actually like and what makes us happy, what keeps us, in a good frame of mind, and what we feel like makes for a really full life. And so we'll often skip like the biggest attractions of a city and just hightail it out of there and go straight to nature and go
Huh.
straight to the ocean or straight to the mountains. And that's the same thing you do when you are breaking free from busy. You pay attention to what makes you happy, what keeps you healthy, what gives you the life you want. And then you just say no to everything else. So we do the same thing when we're traveling.
Okay, so let's talk distraction because you've been speaking about this a little bit lately too. Now, here's how it looks in my life. I feel like we have 24-hour access to everything we could possibly want to know. I mean, how mind blown would someone from, say, 1917 be if they were to travel to 2017 and see how we live our lives? The
Oh my
resources
gosh.
are
Yeah.
amazing, but it's like with that comes a steady stream of information. And for me, no matter how hard I try, I find myself constantly checking social media and emails to make sure that I'm on top of all the things. So what do you see as the biggest forms of distraction and how do we overcome them?
So I define distraction as anything that pulls you away from what you were attempting to do, what you are wanting to do, or what you're trying to accomplish. So it doesn't necessarily always mean technology. It can mean, a photo on your desk that makes you daydream or triggers you in some way. It can be physical discomfort. If like where you're sitting every day makes you uncomfortable, that is distracting. But for most of us, it usually comes down to technology. And my biggest tip is to go on a detox and just see what it's like when it's not there
Hmm.
because I never found much success with um like have trying out, oh, I'm just not going to check my phone in the morning, or I'm not going to look at it over lunch, or whatever some, new attempt is to minimize my time with a screen. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until I said I am going to delete Facebook from my phone and I'm not going to go on Facebook for a week that I saw how much it was affecting me emotionally or how much time I was spending on it. But you really have to give it a full week because if you just do it for a day, it doesn't quite have the same time to like resonate with you and show you the impact it's having on your life. Um, but for any change, whether it's distraction or anything, if you are not ready and motivated to make it, you're just not going to make it. And so I have tried to do a lot of things over the years. I've tried to declutter, I've tried to cut screen time, all of these things. I've tried to stop downloading every new PDF that I find online or read every book that people suggest. And it wasn't until I was motivated to be less busy, I was motivated to tune into what I really wanted and needed, that I had the motivation to stop doing that. So now I remind myself that I have everything I need. I don't need more information. I don't need more resources to do what I'm trying to do. And that has been really helpful for me.
Mm. Okay, so if the distraction is tech, I have an entrepreneurial question because I think most of our listeners are entrepreneurs. So if you have an online presence, how do you manage that for a whole week? Do you delegate or just not post at all or schedule your posts? How do you make that fit within an online focused business?
It can really be however you feel is like a responsible way to do it. So if you can schedule your posts ahead of time so they're still coming out every day. If your Facebook feed is what is triggering you, you can block it on your browser and you can remove Facebook from your phone. So when you log into Facebook on a browser on your computer, there is no feed. It is just completely blank. And then you just go to your post and, interact with your audience or respond to comments or however you want to do it. You can let your audience know you're taking a 1 week break. As you've seen, the internet is plenty full, so they will not care if you're gone for a 1 week's time. Um, And they honestly won't know because their feeds will continue to be full. And most of the time people don't even notice that you're gone for a week because a week in internet time feels like 5 minutes. So
Mm,
you can choose however you want to do it that feels, authentic to you or responsible to you for your business. But for most people, it's not as big of a deal as they're making it out to be. And most audiences would applaud you for taking some time for yourself to figure out, this dance with technology, which is what everyone is trying to do.
mm. Yes, I like that. Marie Forleo has done that like at Christmas time. She'll take
Hmm.
like 2 weeks off. It's like, oh, that's so great that she does that for herself and for her team. So
And
yeah.
I'm sure you've had this happen where someone you're following makes a post and it was like, I haven't been on Instagram for 2 weeks, or I haven't emailed you in like a month, and you were like, oh, I didn't I didn't even notice. Like they make this big gesture of like coming back after some break, and you honestly don't even remember that they took a break because we're all wrapped up in our own lives anyways. So it's usually not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Katie, I think we covered everything I have on my list. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I this was great. I think we covered, everything that is in my world right now. So, yeah, I think this was a great conversation.
Great, absolutely. Okay, so tell me, for people who want to get in touch with you now after this show, how do we find you and interact with you?
You can go to heykatielee.com, and I am Hey Katie Lee everywhere on social media. So, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. And so they can either go to the website or find me on social media.
Okay, great. Katie, thank you so much. It was great to have you on.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, have a great day. Did today's topic inspire you, encourage you, or challenge you to look at your own processes in a different way? Join us in our Facebook group to continue the conversation. It's where all the good stuff happens after the show. It's theaudacityofshe.com/Facebook. Again, that's theaudacityofshe.com/Facebook. See you there.